In this video, we're going to discuss checklists in HZCare, otherwise known as ADLs or activity logs. When your caregiver goes to an appointment and uses the HZ Caregiver app to check in, they also get the chance to fill out a checklist. So, what are these checklists and how do you create them? Checklists can either be a plan of care, or it can be more of a compliance tool for tracking ADLs that you submit to insurers. If it's the latter, you're going to want to use that same checklist for several clients. And so you create it here in the admin section, and then you get to apply that checklist to multiple clients in the client section. If it's a plan of care, you create those checklists right in the client section on each individual client. So we'll start here in the admin section. And you can see there's a default hourly checklist and a default live-in checklist, as well as this Genworth hourly checklist. The two default checklists will be there by default. And if you don't change any of the settings on checklists for a given client, that's what the caregiver is going to see when they're there. They'll see the default hourly checklist or the default live-in checklist based on whether it's an hourly or a live-in appointment. And then you can create additional checklists. I've created this Genworth hourly checklist, and I'm going to create another one, a Genworth live-in checklist. So I'm going to give it that name. I'm going to specify that it is for live-in appointments. And then I can just start building out the checklist. And make breakfast and assist with bathing. And then I can add whatever additional items I like on here. I can flip the positions around. I can hit save. If I need to go back and make an edit to it, click in there. Any additional changes I need to make. But we got a Genworth live-in checklist. So we could go ahead and go to the client section, but let me show you. If we go down to third-party funding in the admin section, we can go ahead and change the default checklist for a given insurer. So it only makes sense that on Genworth, we can make the default hourly checklist the Genworth hourly checklist, and the default live-in the Genworth live-in checklist. And we'll save that. And so now those will be the default options for that insurer instead of the default. We'll go to client, and let's find a client who uses Genworth, just to carry out this example, Lindsay Bluth. And I'm going to go to the checklist tab. So you can see by default on the client, we're using an admin checklist and we're using the default hourly checklist. We could toggle this switch and choose between different hourly options in the admin section, either a default hourly or the Genworth hourly. We'd have the same if we went down to live-in, the default live-in or the Genworth live-in. But we also can build a plan of care style checklist here. I'm going to toggle this first switch off, and then we'll start adding our checklist items. Make lunch, clean kitchen, and we can carry on like that. And you can do the same thing on live-in. Now, you'll see down here there's a list of funding sources on this client. And what you can do is for a given funding source, you can override the checklist we've set up here with a different checklist. So by default, if this is the funding source on an appointment, it's just going to use the same checklist we specified above. But if we want to turn that off, you can see it's going to use whatever the default is for this funding source. And we just made that the Genworth hourly checklist over in the admin section. Same thing here on the live-in side. Even if we had not specified that this funding source is going to use the Genworth hourly and Genworth live-in checklists, we could also just toggle this switch here and select whichever hourly checklist we want. Same thing on the live-in side. So there's a lot of mixing and matching you can do with checklists. Most of the time, it's either going to just be doing the plan of care or just be selecting something from the admin section. But if you want to get very granular and do some overrides in the funding sources, that functionality is there for you. Okay, that's all for checklists and HZCare. Have a good one.